For all the discussion that we said, I've given you the answers and stuff like that. Put everything to the side. We're walking down the street. There is certain consistency within creation. You're not just going to start flying. The bus isn't randomly going to start, turn into a pancake. There is some consistency in creation. There's a beauty. You see a bird, it's flying. Okay, I guess my question to you is, when you look at the migratory instinct of a bewick swan, the homing instinct of a pigeon, the echolocator system in that of a bat, the blood pressure control system in the brain of a giraffe. How many times would a person say, no, that just happened, or that's just this, or that's that? Surely there must be a being that goes beyond that. And the thing is, look, we're not calling you towards, look, it's a cult and you're going to have to do this, and you're going to, look, you pray, you can pray at home, you read the Quran at home, you continue living your life, but it just gives you a moral anchorage. Like, I wouldn't ever want to see you in a state that you're depressed and you're like, what's the point of it all? Because atheism leads eventually, obviously liberalism with a small L, because you believe in the harm principle and all that, or the Kantian categorical imperative, whatever it may be.
Yeah, from Kant, I think that's the best moral principle there is.
Yeah, and then eventually a person thinks, nihilism. Like, how can I say that a surgeon who's working morning to evening is better than a person who's making circles? It leads to absurdities. And a person, the zest of life gets taken from you. So I would say liberalism is the actual control. When Jeremy Bentham said the two sovereign powers are pleasure and pain. And from him, John Stuart Mill then came, perfected or, added the utilitarian. Yeah. So the thing here is, the Quran says this. Slave to your desires? Don't be slave to your desires. And the thing is that if it was man-made, we'd be told to be a slave to the desires, because look at the corporations today. What do the corporations say? Buy this can of Coke. Family time. Love. You have this. This will make you feel strong. I don't know if you remember these perfume adverts. You put them on, the Lynx especially. Put the Lynx advert, and then all the women start gravitating like animals. Or the Pour des Femmes. He puts it out. He's running on the beach. He sees her. She sees him. They like each other. They do that. So they have these very fancy adverts targeting our carnal desires. Look at her, she's so beautiful. Yeah, look at her face, look at her features, symmetry. Okay, look, you want family. Your father wasn't around. Why? Because he likes another woman, so he left your mother, and this happened and that happened. They know. It's the statistics that broken families, the father's not around, people want desires, they're attracted by females. This is exactly what corporations and companies are targeting. Us. There's a philosopher, I think he's German as well, Theodor Adorno. Theodor Adorno, he makes the point that consumerism and movies, music, television, magazines, all these things are trying to distract us from, firstly, making political change, and secondly, from knowing who we are. Like, what's our purpose? What's the job? Like, what are we doing here? So, I would argue that we need Islam. We need Islam and the principles of Islam, because everything else is drawing us towards desires, is drawing us to just sleep with women. Sorry, they're human beings. Or to women, just sleep with men. But when you sleep with somebody, that's a union. There's a closeness. The Quran describes a man and a woman as a garment, because a garment is the closest thing to your skin. That's the closest thing to you. So the Quran describes as garments because there's a sense of intimacy with two people are coming close together, as if spiritually you're one, your souls are, you're like one being. So there's a certain spirituality, there's a certain depth behind these things that even science fails to explain.
Like science behind it.
Like consciousness.
It's anticipation, it's belief. It's the idea of that sex is sacred, and that you should not do that with any person without the holy bond of marriage, right?
Yeah. So the point there would be then if we use the empirical, if we use the harm principle then to prove the morality of it, then we say, okay, let's analyze the harms and let's analyze the pain versus pleasure. And then you can kind of arrive to, of course, our morality is not based on the utilitarian model, it's objective morality.
What is your morality?
So our morality is the objective morality, the morality that's given to us by God, somebody that again is not here, somebody that doesn't want to get something from us. Whilst morality of human beings will always be a morality of getting, of receiving. That's why even if I was to ask you about happiness, how do you define happiness?
I'm not sure. I guess you could define happiness as Bentham did, as more pleasure than pain. And you're happy.
But then I think you know what I'm going to respond to
The
that.
problem with happiness is that it's just like short term. Because happiness comes and happiness goes away.
So that's because happiness is being interpreted again by these corporations as well. Lust as desires. Yeah, just having fun, just having sex with a woman that makes you happy. No, it gives you pleasure. Does it make you happy though? How do you define happiness?
What does
Like-
make you happy?
So joy is about having. Joy is about receiving. Contentment is about having. Happiness is supposed to be, well, according to the Quran, is uninterrupted giving. Uninterrupted giving of something good. Yeah, there's not supposed to be an interruption. That's why happiness will be in paradise. Happiness can be here, but it's difficult because again we go up and down. So happiness like this, that's why even in the American Constitution this is the pursuit of happiness, and that's it, because it's as if you're never going to be able to really attain it. It's like the carrot and the donkey. So they know you're never really going to achieve it. So again, happiness is uninterrupted giving of something good. When it comes to everything else, it's always I need to have this, I need to have that, and that's why it's capitalized. The iPhone, they know you're going to get the next one, because the other one, you like that feeling when you had it and somebody looked at you and said, oh wow, is that the new iPhone? Oh, very nice jacket, very nice. Where did you get this from?
Why did you buy this watch on your wrist?
I didn't. This was a gift.
Oh, okay. Why did they give that to you?
They gave it to me because it's nice. It looks nice, and in Islam we're told tahadu tahabu, exchange gifts with one another and you will love one another. The brother who actually gave me this, he said, look, you record videos for me and you don't ask anything in return. Yeah, because he records things on Islam, yeah, because he's studied philosophy and he's very academic and he's not good with the camera. So I said, look, I'll help you out, and he'll help me learn from you as well. So he said, look, you don't ask for anything, you don't ask for money, so I want to give you a gift. Yeah, so this is my gift to you. The Prophet peace be upon him said, tahadu tahabu, exchange gifts with one another and you will love one another. So then again, that exchange, that gives love amongst us. Whilst when you look at utilitarianism and stuff like that, it's all about the self. The morality of Islam transcends that. And we don't do stuff for the sake of feelings, because feelings come and go. We do stuff for the sake of God. And
So you do stuff because it was written that it's correct.
we do stuff because it's morally the right thing to do, not because it feels good to us.
But you think it's the right thing to do because it was written by God?
Because yes,
That's
because
not objective right, that's called heteronormative. It's called something is right because it was written.
right.
And that's what all the people do here who are religious.
Yes.
The Christian people do that, the Hindu
Yes,
people,
yes,
the
of
Buddhist
course,
people do
of
that.
course.
So how can your be the objective morality if everybody does that in a different way?
No, they also believe they have an objective morality.
Everybody believes that. So
Yeah.
how can your morality be the objective one?
Yes. So the way you determine which objective morality is the one from God is first you have to look at the arguments that they give from God. Like okay, so you claim your objective. What's your book? Who is your prophet? What claims has he made? How can I check it? And what claims are being made empirically, metaphysically, and the likes? That's why we started off the conversation with this, because it then follows that once you see that, look, Islam fulfills that criteria, then okay, let's now look at the morality. Let's see how Islam can assist us and help us and guide us. That's what it comes down to. It's not about, okay, let's compare moralities, because what we're doing is we're tugging at the leaves. At the start of the conversation, we went straight to the roots. We said, where's your claims coming from? Somebody can say his name's James. James says, I have morality that you should be, kind to the whales. Okay, that's nice.
That's not morality, that's...
But his morality would be, animals are more superior than human beings, therefore we need to look after animals. So that's his morality.
That's his maxim.
Yeah, that's his maxim. Yeah. So that's a claim that he's making. If he now claims that, look, it's coming from a higher being and this and that, okay, now it's becoming more deeper. Now I need to analyze your claims, like what we've been doing. You see, so I would say that the morality of anyone who believes in God, frankly, anyone who believes in God, it's a stronger moral anchorage than somebody who just relies on the self, because the self, like Noam Chomsky said, manufacturing consent. Consent can be manufactured, and even our dispositions, and so you can use nudge theory, and you can use manipulation that certain politicians are using, propaganda. It's actually very risky. If you're at the mercy of the people, and the people are led by their desires, they're led with, survival, then, who's to say that your survival is in their favor? You know what I'm saying? It's like utilitarianism. Like the poor guy that's in the middle of the Colosseum getting chased by a lion, like that's his, the benefit of the people, because they have collectively more pleasure than him. It makes sense utilitarianism.
That's one of the weaknesses of utilitarianism.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, regardless of whether you're a minority or a majority, when Muslims ruled in certain places like Palestine and Andalus, you had Christians and Jews that lived very amicably. Maimonides, you can search these names up. They were Christians and Jews that reached very high ranks. There weren't any issues with Muslims and Jews and Christians living together harmoniously. It was only when politics started coming in. And Karen Armstrong makes this strong point as well, that a lot of these people that make these claims, religious claims, are actually political in nature. This politics that's actually, pardon my French, a bastardized kind of the true picture. And so that's why I would say, and that's why I'm making the claim that I think, no, not even I think, I make the postulation confidently that Islam will make your life better. Islam has the answers, and Islam will meet any criticism and criteria as long as it comes criticism and in questions robustly, because of, I would say, truth from God.
I think you should be very careful with Islam has the answers. I think you should be careful Islam has an answer, just like every other religion. For me, religion is something that, I don't think religion is bad. I think it just makes sense, because we're very intelligent species, we're humans, we have rationality. Therefore we can ask questions like, why do we exist? What happens after our death? But we are not able to answer these questions. And that's the thing, I think, at this point where you ask this question, this is where religion comes in. Because religion is the thing you can answer with everything. And I do think that makes sense to do that, because it helps you with a lot of problems yourself. But I don't think it's the answer, it's a possible answer. And therefore I think it's very absolute and maybe a bit short-minded to think that your religion is the only one. That everybody else here who does exactly the same thing as you do. They talk to people, they talk about objective morality, they talk about how their religion is the most immaculate, the most specific, the most timeless, and the best one, simply. All of these people are the same. And I just think that's not the way you should do it. I think you should accept religion as something that could possibly be human-made, which follows up to better human life within society. As you know, neither you nor I can prove God, and neither can you. You cannot prove God.
I think
you can try to do some evidence, but Thomas von Aquinas himself said that to prove God is something you should not do, because it's hilarious. Those evidences are not really evidence, they just like leave a lot of room for critics.
The thing with Aquinas is he's made some good points, he's made some bad points, he's got some strengths, he's got some weaknesses.
Like everyone.
Like everyone. But the point is that the people in the park, I've made these claims and I'm going to stick by these claims categorically. And you're more than welcome. As you explore the park, you will hear the claims made by the other people. The claims will not be of a empirically, rationally, timeless nature. You will see the flaws in the arguments. You will see yourself. And the claims that I'm saying, because I come to the park as well, I've debated and spoken to many people. That's why I can confidently make this claim. And that's why when we make the argument from dependency, veracious, logical, and when we then give it characteristics, and then when we posit that, okay, there has to be a holy book, then the holy book with the compounding of evidence, I'm sorry, but the level of certainty increases. I agree with you that in terms of, let's just say, just for us to be accurate in our speech, we can use the word inference to the best explanation. So I would say that Islam has the best inference to the best explanation because of the systems that are in place, all the ones that I mentioned, like preservation with the three-pronged approach, from the ancient religions like Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, they will never make those claims. They will never make the claims of a chain of narration where not only can you quote somebody who's in that chain, but you have entire biographies about those people. A non-Muslim can come and critique it. You have prophecies that are specific, that can be backed up by non-Muslim sources. I appreciate that maybe you've heard these for the first time. Maybe when you've had a chance to kind of reflect over them and you hear those arguments as well, and you'll say, look, this is what I heard from Muslim. What about you guys? So it'll be interesting, and I would argue, and that's why I can make that categorical statement, that when there is a build-up of the evidence, it becomes illogical to suggest, you know what, all of that evidence, that scaffolding of evidence is a maybe, is this, is that, just like the example that we gave just of testimony. Yeah, or if a person says that, look, I know your father's name, I know your father's name, your father's name, there comes a time where it's actually ridiculous now to say, we still don't know, he's now equal to, the other 100 people that I hear. I say no, you can't put that in the same place. And because of the reasons that we discussed earlier on, the voracious nature, the other religions actually can't, because they'll be polytheists. There'll be holes in their narrative. The book is not preserved. It's very abstract. But I'm being told to follow a book, but it's very abstract. But then again, okay, there's a person he's God. How can a person be a God? So there's ways that you can intellectually break it down. But over here, as I'm sure you saw as well, I've been kind of like very open, like, okay, so you think, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? With those, they're just going to say, look, you have to, look, this is part of this belief or that belief or this and that. And the point of morality that I said follows on. For once you've accepted that there is a necessary being, then when we give it the characteristics that are in line with the Quran and the definition of God, then when we look at scripture, we look at prophecies, we look at the systems that have been put in place, then we say, you know what, Islam's case is the strongest. That's the conclusion that a person reaches.
That's your conclusion, that Islam
Yes, of course. And I would argue also, upon your research as well, we'll give you the Quran as well, and you can, read that when you get a chance. It's in English, it's a translation. Yeah. So, you can check it out yourself. You're more than welcome to read the other scriptures as well. No issue with that. Read it, speak to their people, watch the discussions and this and that. And I promise you, hand on my heart, because who knows, we might not get to meet again. You'll see the veracity of what's discussed, because I've done philosophy as well. I have many experiences of hearing rebuttals and arguments and this and that. I gave you the arguments that I saw somebody like yourself with a philosophical background would appreciate. I'm conscious that we're cold and we've been standing here for a long time. Upon reflection, you will see, and this notion that just because there's loads of something and they're all claiming something, Therefore, you know what? We can't claim that. One very simple analogy is I give even when we're going to buy shampoo. It's like 30 different types of shampoos. I never see anybody in Superdrug or these shops paralyzed with choice, saying, oh my God, there's so many, what do I do? Immediately what people start doing is they pick it up, they look at the back, they start looking at what does this have? Like, I want something that doesn't have SLS and colors in it and stuff like that, that's going to be bad for my skin. Somebody might say I have a lot of dandruff, so I need something that's anti-dandruff. Someone might say I need something that smells good, like herbal essences. So again, you can't say that, look, just because there's so many, you say, okay, if I want anti-dandruff that smells good, that's this, then I need to read the back, I need to do my research, and then I need to try it out. Once I try it out and I have read it, I've done my research, I've used the other ones, then I got a skin problem, somebody else used it, they got a skin problem, so do you see there's a compounding of evidence. Now, look, there's never going to be anything definitive. The definitive thing that people say is God comes down and he says, yo, how's it going? I'm God, believe in me. But the whole purpose here is, life is a test. We as Muslims and other people of faith, we believe life is a test. Just like in an exam, you're asked a question, you're not given the answers. That's the logic behind it. It's an examination. So yes, in the examination, you'll use, okay, I read this in a textbook, I watched a YouTube video about this, I asked my dad about this, okay, my teacher said this is a 3-mark essay question, okay, I can do this, beginning, middle, end, boom, 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 boom. So you're equipped, and you know, logically you can say, you know what, most likely, like I don't know about you, but there came a time that I would know at the end of the exam, if I had 15 minutes left, at the end I could say, I know I got that right, I could estimate my own marks, and I'd know roughly what I got. It's the same. It's the same with this, that I think, don't become...
You're sure of something that you're right.
Yeah.
But you believe that you're right, you don't know that
Of course, but sure with the inference to the best explanation. That when we're looking logically, rationally, we have, look, logic and rationality is something everybody has. And the thing is, look, somebody who's created us, he's put these things within us. Like Justin Barrett, he's from Oxford, he did a study, and he concluded that every person intuits a belief in God. It's intuitively within us. You can check this later. Type in Justin Barrett, predisposition of believing in God. So it's like a sign within us that there is a yearning of God. Then we see evidence around us. Then we have logic and reasoning. So things add up, and for us to say, you know what, no, just because there's so many, it's fine. Look, as love and respect for all, of course, we respect people of other faiths, you have a morality and you're doing this. Like, to be honest, when I see people that are practicing Christians, it makes me happy. At a time where people are becoming depressed and suicidal, I'm glad you have some form of morality. So, look, it's not that, but when we're talking about truth and when we're talking about, evidence and stuff like that, we have to be a bit more precise, and that's the angle that I'm coming from. I agree with you, and you did make a good point. But of course, it is a belief. But that belief is predicated on our rationality, our logic.
Yes, but the logic is not like completely 100%. I think that's very important for people to understand that religion is belief, not certainty.
Yes.
You do not know. You believe.
So belief based upon rationality, testimony, testimony, you've got empirical evidence, you've got philosophical evidence, you've got teleological evidence, cosmological evidence. So again,
it's not the evidence of there should be something, there could be something, but it's not the evidence of there is Allah like you think he is, like you imagine, like everybody else imagines him. There's no evidence of that. There's just simply that you think there's evidence that there could be a higher form of God.
But then when you say evidence, what do you mean by evidence?
That's the tricky question. Evidence is something, it's hard to define. I don't think that those evidences of Thomas von Aquin you started with, that of the mover and stuff, that those can be called a true evidence. I think evidence is something that if you would now tell me something, and then later on you would say that you did not say that, and I would pick the camera and tell you that you exactly did it, have like some footage, which counts as evidence. I think that's true evidence.
Give me an example.
That was an example.
No, that's a specific example. I mean something that we can apply to religion or to God. Evidence of God, like so.
I do not have an evidence for God. That's
No,
the
no, no.
point.
What would you regard as evidence for God? What fulfills the criteria of evidence that you're seeking?
That I'm seeking. You mean
Yeah.
like evidence for me that there is a God?
So you said to me that look, the argument from contingency is not evident. You don't regard that as evidence. I would argue.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would argue that's philosophical and rational evidence. But you're saying, but it's not evidence. I say, okay, that's interesting. What do you mean when you say evidence? So, for you, what is regarded as evidence for God?
Wait, for you that's 100% evidence from Thomas from Aquinas?
No. For the evidence that I said, so you've got the argument from rationality.
Yes.
Yeah. You've got the argument from philosophical. Then you've got the arguments of design. Then you've got the argument from cosmology.
That's evidence for a possible higher life. That's not the evidence for a specific God.
So that's why I'm saying these are evidences for, say, a necessary being. Yeah. Then from necessary being, once we've established that there is a necessary being, you call him the prime mover, but that's different. That's not what I subscribe to. The necessary being, I think, for me, is more voracious. And even the contingency argument is the strongest argument that's out there that I've come across. So that philosophically ration, because the thing, Jarvis, is when we're talking about evidence, that's subjective to a lot of people. That's why I asked you, maybe I should have asked you at the beginning, that what do you mean by evidence? For Christopher Hitchens, he's an atheist. I don't believe in God. But his brother Peter Hitchens is a Christian. Somebody asked him, what's the evidence? He said, look, that's subjective. For me, the evidence was experiential. So for some people, evidence they'll regard as experiential. For some people, like if someone is scientific, they will be an empiricist. They say, I need empirical evidence. I need something I put underneath a microscope.
Yes.
For, say, a philosopher, he says, I need like syllogism. Like anything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. So that's the Ghazalian syllogism. So for some people, they'd say, this is deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, they would say, evidentially is more stronger than inductive reasoning. Because induction is based upon the small or the less, and you're extrapolating that to the wide, the micro to the macro.
Yes.
Yeah? But deduction is different. It's actually more voracious. So I would actually argue that the rational and the philosophical arguments here are actually more stringent. That's why we're on the topic of empiricism and evidence. Because I would say that's actually very strong evidence, frankly. So that's why it's very interesting to find out what you deem as evidence. You could even say personally. It doesn't have to be something like for everybody. You, Jarvis, what would you like to see?
Evidence for a God or for your specific
For God. For God.
For
My God is your
Allah or
God.
for-
It's look, God. We believe, look, God is God. He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. certain people will put restrictions on him, and that's where the differences happen. But God, I mean, people believe he's all-powerful, all-seeing, all-hearing. That's pretty much standard for most people. So a God that's all-powerful, all-seeing, all-hearing. What evidence would you require?
I guess it should be something experiential. I don't think that people telling me to believe this, or people trying to do some evidence like cosmologic or teleologic, which just is, as I said before, like an empty space at the beginning where you can like assert everything you want to, like the Big Bang, your God, any other God.
We can come back to that later.
Okay.
Because yeah.
So yeah, for me it's experiential, so empiristic, I guess. For the evidence of God.
You said experiential.
No, where was it? Empiristic?
Yeah, empiricism.
Empirism.
Yeah, in terms of empirical evidence, that's different. Are you conflating the two or both? One is experience. So empirical evidence is stuff that can be scientifically tested. You put under a microscope, or you use the kind of criteria of science.
But that would be perfect if you could scientifically prove God.
Right. So the first thing is experiential. So if you think back in our discussion, I gave you an evidence. It wasn't necessarily, well, it's an evidence according to yourself. which I said that you can go home and you can actually communicate with God yourself.
It's a monologue. It's not talking back, right? I don't know call that communication.
No, but the thing, Jarvis, is that when we look, the purpose, when we look at life is a test. That's not going to change. Like evidence for God, like your belief in God, if you've seen God, it's no longer a test. It's like me sitting in an exam and they've shown me the results. How are you testing my abilities? So that is like a maxim. As a believer, that life is a test. You're never going to see God. Like that, seeing God, in fact, that's not even a criteria in science as well. Quarks. We don't see quarks. We theorize quarks. Yeah, we say, okay, the nucleus is made from quarks, 6 types of quarks, and then you've got bosons. There's numerous types of bosons, and like that, we don't see bosons. We don't see quarks. We theorize based upon you've got the atom. It reacts in this way. Okay, let's try it a few times. Boom! It must have these small things. If it has those small things, they must have this charge. Can we measure that charge? Yes. Dark energy. We haven't seen dark energy. Can't do experiments with dark energy. Wow, that was loud.
Yeah.
It's quite talented. Big Bang.
Let me ask you a different question.
Sure.
What has to happen for you to stop believing in God? What is an event that has to happen to you, or something that has to be found for you to stop believing in God, or to believe that your religion is simply not true? It was man-made. It was created for, as I said, for moral purposes to control society. What has to happen?
The thing is that question, I think.
Outer life from outer space? With us?
No, but that's the thing. Look, sorry, say that last bit again.
Like aliens. Life
Okay.
from outer space.
Yeah.
Different life form. Is there anything that could happen that you would stop believing?
So that, based upon the argument that I've given you from dependency, whatever the...
Das ist gerade sehr interessant.
Okay, perfect. So when we're looking at the creation, anything that we see around us, we can classify in one of 3 types of existences: dependent, independent, or impossible existence. So whether it's aliens or whether it's something else, they're still going to be dependent. And again, that argument from dependency, that there has to be an end, logically, rationally, to the end. There has to be an end to that chain. So whether we find out it's aliens, whether there's a singularity or this or that, that's not going to change. Because let's just say you think that there's a Big Bang, and I'm saying, look, there's rationality and logic, and the person, no, the universe came from illogic and irrational. I say, look, I stand in a better position than yourself. Because you're saying that everything that you see, the design and everything around you, is illogical, it's irrational.
That's not what I said.
No, I know it's not what you're saying. I'm giving an argument of somebody else that might.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. That might follow that chain of that chain of argumentation. That's what they would. That's what they would say. So for me, it's impossible. Just like it's an impossibility that that there's an infinite regress of dependent things. It's impossible. There has to be an end. There has to be a necessary being. That's why whether it's great philosophers, whether it's great theologians or whatnot, there has to be an end. Otherwise, it's ridiculous. It's an impossibility. We can't be here. You and I can't be standing here having this conversation as contingent, dependent beings if there's an infinite regress of contingent beings.
But you still didn't answer my question. Is there something that could happen that you stop believing?
Yeah. So to answer your question, is just like this is an impossibility. It doesn't make sense. So for me, there being no God it doesn't make sense. They can't. There's nothing. They're just like there's no evidence that can be that I can think of that would take that away, because I've hit it from every single angle, philosophically, rationally, in terms of textual criticism, in terms of prophecies and the likes, every angle. In fact, even testimony now. Who's the person telling me that, oh, there's an alien and this and that? There's an element of testimony. And I would argue that testimony in Islam is actually more stringent than testimony that we take. Oh, I go to school, my professor tells me that there is Alaska. shows me a textbook, there's a picture on there. I've never been in Alaska. You know, that evidence is very weak. And I don't know that teacher. Maybe she's an agent sent by, I don't know, the Matrix or whatever. So the point is, but in Islam, our testimony is actually more stringent, is actually more stronger. We say, okay, who's this person that's narrated such and such saying? What's their name, family, tribe? And Islamic chain of narration actually scrutinizes reliability of that person as well. Yeah, were they time? Matan, sanad, matan, tarikh, which is the chain, the matan, the text, and the age, and the time. Was that person even alive at that time? So our stringent nature of even testimony evidence is actually, I would argue, much more stringent than even testimony that's used in peer review studies till today, induction process. Like science is all well and good, but we then have to go into science and the scientific method, which again has so many different limitations. And to rely solely upon science, in fact, even as evidence, like even science can't prove science using the scientific method. Testimony, it uses testimony, can't be proven using the scientific method. The Higgs boson, like yes, we discovered it, but first we theorized it. We didn't have evidence for it. So, like everything that's like M theory, string theory, multiverse theory, these are all postulations. Yeah, there's no evidence for them. And at the moment, we're actually going against the procedure of science, which is the falsification test. That you have evidence, you prove it to be false. But these guys have something and they're proving it to be true. So even our understanding of science is not the science that we had back in the days. Yeah, the science of, say, Karl Popper. And even look, if a person says that, look, we're, they're so, mindless, materialistic, unguided, atoms. How can we even start trusting our own psyche? Because if we're just random rearrangement of atoms, who's to say that, we can trust even this sort of stuff? And when it comes to people, like the Mandela effect, people can, they've tried to change scripture and do this and do that. But the thing with Islam is, number one, it's simple. Number two, it's memorized. So human beings can burn the Quran and they can do this and do that. But things are, number one, intuited. You can memorize it. Intuited, memorize, and in fact the Quran is so fantastic and amazing. You can burn the Quran and all the other holy scriptures. The Quran is the only one that can be written word for word.
Because it's just one version of it?
No, because it's preserved. It's preserved and the other books aren't preserved. So that's one of the beauties. Like if you're claiming that something is from God, there needs to be some unique things. And that's why at the beginning I mentioned many unique things that are present in Islam that others don't claim. They simply don't claim. That's why when you said, look, other people will make that claim, they won't. And you will see this. You will see this, that you will ask them, look, how is the Bible preserved? Like, is it a live language? Like this, you can ask them your own questions. And look, it's not me telling you, okay, do this. There's no kind of cajoling. I'm not cajoling you to kind of do things a certain way. You do the way things you want. You want to speak to God when you go home, you're saying it's a one-way conversation. Look, the way God will respond to you is through means. That's why even when He communicated with us initially, it was through the Holy Scripture, was through a prophet. It'll always be through means, because the maximum of life is a test. So you will never get that thing. You will have an experience. You'll have itminan, contentment in the heart. Yeah, because you're saying experience, like the majority of the things, Jarvis, are actually not seen. Yeah, our dreams, imagination, consciousness, feelings, ideas. These things are actually not seen. So if you rely on solely things that are seen, things that can be put under a microscope, then we're seriously limiting existence and life. That's why I would say the initial argument was deductive, philosophical, rational. These all compounded together, which is more than scientific, frankly. Because I can give you like the Brontosaurus. There was a discovery, they found bones of a dinosaur called the Brontosaurus. And the guy who discovered it, it was a forgery. Because the Brontosaurus was the Apatosaurus and the Camarasaurus. He found one set of bones which had the head missing. So he added So the Apatosaurus he added to the Camarasaurus, and he passed it off as the Brontosaurus. It got peer reviewed, and it got put up, and then fantastic. But then people found out that it was a forgery. Yeah. And then even till today, the Brontosaurus is still, still see sculptures of it and stuff like that. But if you check, it's been taken out.